Here we are. Let me okay. So I have shared. Um, I've done the setup to where we should be broadcasting a few places. My name is Curtis Morrison, immigration attorney. This is Let's Talk Immigration, our Wednesday show every Wednesday, where I just kind of tell you what's going on with Ready to Law and what we're looking at. Um, so first, I want to go to US Visa News. US Visa News is a website where we find out policy updates by the State Department. Very important to for people that are going through visa processes, right? Um, I'm going to share my screen to the US Visa News website. Here we go. Um, so we see EB visas. These EB means employment based. We see in September already, there are 3 posts about how EB visas, the annual limit has been reached for EB2, EB1, and EB3 and EW categories. So that's everything but EB5, really. What that means is if you are, let's say, I know we've got a client like this, you have a green card interview, 485 interview at a USCIS office this month, you might get approved, but they won't issue you the green card because they don't have any green cards. Congress allots green cards in a limited amount of number based on the fiscal year, and the fiscal year is over September 30th, and they are out of green cards for EB1, EB3, and EB2, which includes EB2 and a W, right? So none of those green cards, no more for the rest of September. October 1st, it restarts again, okay? There's 2 other updates that I want to talk about today. Adjudicating non-immigrant visa applicants in their country of residence and adjudicating applicants in their country of residence for immigrant visa applicants. We'll do these in order that they happen. This is the one for immigrant visa applicants. In the past, actually, this policy has changed back and forth. In the past, it has been, in the recent past, in the last couple of years, last year, it's been possible to do an immigrant visa interview in a country where you are not a resident and you are not a national. Those days are over. Effective November 1st, the National Visa Center will schedule immigrant visa applicants in their country of residence or, if requested, country of nationality. Of course, there are exceptions because some people have a nationality or country of residence where there is no U.S. embassy. And so in those cases, this is the embassies that you'll be scheduled at. So how does this impact like the visa applicants that are regularly our clients? Here's a big one, Somalia. They all have to go to Nairobi now. The only way that they don't have to go to Nairobi is if they have residence outside of Somalia in a third country, not Somalia or Nairobi. That's unfortunate because a lot of Somalis don't like to go to Nairobi. The U.S. Embassy there has not been great, and they like to go to Djibouti and other places. Not anymore. Which reminds me, Djibouti is still the immigrant visa designated embassy for Yemen. People from Sudan still need to go to Cairo, South Sudan, Nairobi. Russia. This is interesting. Warsaw and Almaty for IR5 and Tashkent for IR5 only. So Tashkent is okay with parents of U.S. citizens, but not spouses of U.S. citizens. It's pretty strange. So this is a pain that they're restricting Russian visa applicants because a lot of Russians cannot get Schengen visas, so they can't go to Warsaw. And so, anyway, their options are really Almaty for IR5s and Tashkent. But if it's an IR1 and before, we could send you to Australia or Bangladesh or something. We can't do that now unless we convince the NVC that you have permanent residence in one of these fourth countries or something. So Iran is still, for immigrant visas, still Abu Dhabi, Ankara, and Yerevan, 3 embassies that it takes a year to get an interview at, or in the case of Abu Dhabi right now, like 2 years. Okay. So this is not a good development. It's going to take it longer for people to immigrate in a lot of situations as a result of this development. And I think that was the point, to put up another obstacle to immigration, which is what the Trump administration likes to do. Okay, now here is the subsequent update adjudicating non-immigrant visa applicants in their country of residence. This got a lot of attention because it affects a lot of Indians, particularly, that get their visa stamps for renewal, and they were going to third countries to do that that were faster, and not just Indians, but like other people were doing that too, and so it's affecting them. But it's also affecting for like H-1Bs, but it's also affecting a lot of other visa and non-immigrant visa categories. F1 students, right? F1 students can no longer go to an interview unless it's in the country where they live or their nationality. And here's where we have a surprise. For Iran, before they could go to anywhere. I mean, before you could go anywhere for a non-immigrant visa interview. And now Iran is just one country, and that is Dubai. Of course, Iranian non-immigrant visas, I have to do an intervention with you. Why are you applying for one? Because the travel ban does not have an exemption for a non-immigrant visa for an Iranian. The only thing you might have available to you is a national interest exception, which I've never seen yet, and it's been in effect since June 9th, or a sports exception. And I've not seen one of those yet either. Of course, we don't have a practice that deals a lot with athletes. The few athletes that have contacted me are coming to aspire to come to the U.S. to be on a U.S. sports team, and that does not appear to fit within the exception. It's for a single sporting event, is what the exception says. So, also, non-immigrants from Russia can only go to Astana or Warsaw. It's pretty restrictive. So you have to leave Russia. You have to leave Russia, but instead of being able to go to any U.S. embassy, you can only go to these 2 U.S. embassies. The whole point of this, I can't believe even Ukrainians, if you could go anywhere, or Afghanistan, if you're leaving a war zone, you should be able to go to interview with any U.S. embassy you can get to. Afghanistan and Ukraine now, not anymore. Ukrainians can only interview for non-immigrant visas at Krakow or Warsaw, and Afghanistan, Islamabad. So this is going to cause a lot of people hardship, and it's going to make it more difficult for students to come to the U.S. It's going to make more temporary work visas for them to come to the U.S. And it's going to make it more difficult for tourists to come to the U.S. But, the Trump administration doesn't care about our economy. They're doing everything they can to destroy it otherwise. So that's not a concern here for them. Okay, so I think we talked about all the recent updates since our last Let's Talk Immigration show, right? So I do have a question. I'll go ahead and jump into that. Hi, Morrison. Any news about the travel ban? Great question. Okay, so the reason this user is maybe asking this question is because when the travel ban came out on June 4th, 2025, talking about Proclamation 10949, there was a provision that says within 90 days of the date of this proclamation, and every 180 days thereafter, the Secretary of State, in consultation with the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security, and the Director of National Intelligence, shall submit a report to the President through the Assistant to the President for Homeland Security, who I think is Stephen Miller, describing his assessment and recommending whether any suspension and limitations imposed by Sections 2 and 3 of this proclamation should be continued, terminated, modified, or supplemented. Okay, so who's responsible for doing something here? The Secretary of State. Who is the Secretary of State? That's Marco Rubio. So Marco Rubio, within 90 days, had to give a report to Stephen Miller. 90 days of June 4th is over. It was like last week. Okay, so I presume that report's already happened. However, we have not seen any changes to the ban. There are a lot of people that are optimistic that maybe the two things I hear with optimistic is I hear a lot of people think that maybe Trump will exclude their country or maybe Trump will exclude their visa category. I don't think either of those things are going to happen. It would be great if they did. I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I just think that it's more likely that they will add more countries to the ban because the goal of this administration right now is to it's sort of a nativist agenda to keep immigrants out and get the ones that are here out. It's a real dark moment in U.S. history. So that's why I'm not optimistic that the travel ban is going to be rescinded or modified in a positive way. Okay. So what's that mean? Does that mean that we're not going to fight the travel ban? No, that does not mean that. We have 5, soon to be 6 lawsuits pending challenging the lawfulness of the travel ban. 3 of those are in D.C. 1 is in Massachusetts. We are amending the complaint in that one today. 1 is in the Central District of California. And we're getting ready to file the 6th lawsuit today, and that's for the family preference categories plaintiffs. CM 539, if you're one of those plaintiffs. We said we were going to file that the first of the month. Usually we don't miss our deadline by that much, but we had a good reason. We were able to obtain new information and evolve our legal theory in ways that we think will make that lawsuit stronger. And so we're filing that lawsuit in the Central District of California, and it will be filed this week. Okay, so it was worth the delay. That's what I'm saying there. It's not about filing the quickest lawsuit. It's about doing the best job we can to get the result that everybody needs. Okay. I'm getting this question a lot from Iranian students, like, hey, why aren't you putting together a new Iranian student group? And we do have an Iranian student group pending. The Jahani case before Judge Chutkan. We're waiting on her order on our motion to amend our complaint to allow for a challenge of the travel ban. We've already, filed that proposed amended complaint. And we were hoping that we could see what comes of that and learn from it and actually demonstrate to other Iranian students impacted by the travel ban, like what it looks like before we get you involved in litigation. But I realize a lot of you are really impatient for that. Like you're ready to go now. And I was just, so I don't mind telling you, one of our competitors, a colleague that we have litigated with before in the past during VB 2020 litigation, Jeff Joseph with BAL Group, is putting together a group lawsuit for Iranian students to challenge the travel ban. Not sure on the pricing. I think it's a little bit more expensive than what we usually charge, but at the same time, they're ready to move forward. And at this point, we would rather wait. At this point, we're not ready to onboard such a lawsuit at this moment. So if you're impatient, go check out Jeff Joseph and the BAL Group, and you can move forward with their case. If you have a pending mandamus lawsuit and then you go to participate in a group lawsuit, make sure you tell the attorney for the group lawsuit that you are participating in that you have that pending case. The reason is that pending case, that old case, could impact the proper venue for the new case. And if there's been orders in that old case, it could impact through something called res judicata or claim preclusion. It could impact the ability of what you could argue in the new case. So very important to communicate with your new lawyer what happened with your old lawyer. Okay. When I say old, I'm not talking about age. I'm not an old lawyer. I'm only 50 something. Okay. Hurt my own feelings. So that's all that's going on with the travel ban litigation. I talked about the visa news. What else is going on? Okay, so in the U.S., the Supreme Court weighed in this week with a decision that law enforcement officers now can do something that is sort of crazy. They can stop and detain and ask questions of somebody based upon their skin color and race. And before that wasn't allowed. They had to be an articulable reason. But what the Supreme Court said is like one articulable reason is that they're in a job that undocumented folks often are in. So it's a little crazy. So now ICE can stop and detain people that they couldn't detain before. This reminds me of something. They did this in Arizona. I think it was called SB 70, like 10 years ago. And everybody in the country was like up in a roar about, like, really upset. We boycotted Arizona. And yet here we are 10 years later. Sometimes things don't get better, right? Instead of it just being Arizona, now the whole country is like this. So if you're out there and you are undocumented, I hate to say this, but you need to start being really careful, right? Because you are at risk the more you are in public and in places where you can be detained or come in contact with law enforcement. Okay. And that's not just undocumented folks, because they also arbitrarily detain people that are documented, that have visas. They raided this plant in Georgia last week, the Hyundai plant, and took, I think it was over 300 workers from South Korea who were here in the U.S. with visas to train U.S. workers. Completely insane, but they've been detained. South Korea, to its credit, negotiated with Trump to get them all released, and a chartered plane returned them to South Korea so they could go back and deal with the trauma of what they just went through. And when that was happening, I was thinking, South Korea, way to go. 195 other countries. What the fuck are you doing? Why don't you step up and start negotiating with the Trump administration and demand that they treat the nationals of your country with the same amount of respect and dignity? I mean, you all have leverage with the U.S., right? If you want the U.S. to you just have to stand up for yourself. I realize it's complicated, but If you're listening, France, if you're listening, Mexico, if you're listening, Canada, I'm talking to you. Okay. That's all I have today to talk about. Um, we are at a difficult, dark time right now with respect to immigration. So everybody take care of yourself and just remember this isn't forever and do what you can to get us through to the other side. Okay? Have a good week, and I will see you next week, the 17th, for Let's Talk Immigration.